Gravity Falls Season 2, Episode 16, Roadside Attraction. I had a lot of you guys, telling me to beware of this episode. That it is the worst episode of the series by a pretty significant margin. And I'm sorry, but I disagree with you. This episode had a very simple plot, even simpler than the average episode of Gravity Falls, even some of the simpler ones. There are a bunch of tourist traps in Oregon aside from the Mystery Shack, and occasionally Stan will be pranked by the proprietors of those establishments. So he's decided that this year he's going to get revenge by going from tourist trap to tourist trap and pranking them back. And he is taking Mabel and Mabel's friends along with him, as well as Seuss, but Seuss doesn't really play a big part in the episode. When it's discovered that Dipper hasn't gotten over his feelings for Wendy yet, he decides to go on the road trip too, so that he can try to work through his feelings by meeting other girls and moving on. And so the majority of this episode is spent with the characters going from tourist trap to tourist trap, pulling pranks, while Stan helps Dipper to find confidence and behave like a little pickup artist to, as Stan puts it, practice talking to girls. Dipper, when he is confident, is very charming, and people tend to listen to what he has to say, so it's pretty easy for him to start getting numbers and email addresses from a bunch of the girls who are also around touring these tourist traps. However, this starts to go to his head, and he starts getting a little flirty with Grenda and Candy, and Candy is very receptive to it. She develops a little bit of a crush on Dipper, and when she tells Mabel, of course Mabel tries to set them up. Candy asks Dipper on a date, but he's not ready for a relationship yet. He's just practicing for the future. He's trying to move on from Wendy by proving to himself that he has other options, that a future without Wendy isn't entirely bleak. And before he can tell Candy any of this, at the final of the tourist traps that they intend to sabotage, Mystery Mountain, it just so happens that a bunch of the other girls that Dipper had been talking to are also there as part of their vacations. All of them, including Candy, realize that Dipper was just playing it, wanting a relationship, that he was acting like a pickup artist. They all get upset with him, and now Candy is genuinely hurt. At one point, Stan had used the justification that it's okay if Dipper toys with the feelings of these girls, because he's never going to meet them again. There aren't going to be any consequences for this, but having Candy be affected by this, having her feelings get hurt in a meaningful and long-lasting way, did a really good job of kind of bitch-slapping that idea in the face. But I will say right now that I'm glad that they also brought the other girls back in, even if it is a little convoluted that all of them would show up at this one particular attraction at this one particular time. Bringing them back into this did show that Dipper's behavior wasn't okay, just because he wasn't going to see those girls again. Because rather than them realizing that he didn't care about them back home and being hurt back home where we couldn't see them, we got to see them hurt here, and Dipper got to see them hurt here. He got to experience that. It affected him. It taught him that what he was doing was wrong. This is where we finally get our supernatural threat for the episode. One of the attractions that brings people to Mystery Mountain is an urban legend about spider people who live in the forest. Stan's doing the pickup artist stuff on a ticket-taker lady. They go for a walk in the woods. It turns out she's a spider person. He gets captured, and Dipper and Candy and Grenda and Mabel end up saving him. And it was really cool. It was actually Candy who figured out how to escape the spider and then capture her. I felt like in a narrative that kind of belittled Candy a little bit and kind of just included her to be injured by Dipper's behavior, that it was really neat that they gave her something so substantial to do by the end. It ends with our merry band of pranksters returning to the Mystery Shack and discovering that the proprietors of the various other tourist traps have already retaliated, and we learn that Candy has gotten over her crush and has forgiven Dipper, and they're going to be able to be friends again. It was a cute ending, though I will say, poor Seuss, man. Dude really has a hard time. And yeah, I actually liked this episode. It wasn't perfect or anything, but I still enjoyed it. I love the message that behaving like a pickup artist is kind of a scummy thing to do. Because unless you're in a situation where you're sure the other party is also interested in that kind of thing, that fake charm, that fake connection that doesn't lead to anything long-term or meaningful, and there are people who are interested in that kind of thing. I'm not saying there aren't, but unless you're sure that the other person is also looking for a relationship like that, pickup artistry is a real douche thing to do, because it can be damaging. It can hurt people. So I immediately love that they took so many digs at it. I mean, Stan almost got eaten alive because he was being a pickup artist. I also, of course, love that Mabel's friends were here and that Candy got so much more to do than she usually does, because lately it's been Grenda who's gotten more to do. So this felt like a little bit of quid pro quo. And I'll be perfectly honest, I hadn't really thought of it until this episode, but shipping Dipper with Candy isn't a terrible idea. I also didn't mind that they addressed the idea that Dipper isn't over Wendy yet, because of course he's not going to be over Wendy yet. And it was neat to see all those other tourist traps. It was a great little bit of world building. Now, I will freely acknowledge that this episode is a little bit more fillery than I would prefer at this late stage in the series. We have literally one more episode before we get to the final 3 episodes of the show, which, let's not kid ourselves, are one big episode. We have 2 episodes left. This is the 3rd episode from the end of the show, and it's this. Aside from acknowledging that Dipper still has feelings for Wendy, which is something that logically we could all figure out for ourselves, this doesn't really contribute to the overall narrative of the show at all. There is no way that the crew working on this show didn't know that it was ending after this season at this point. Now, maybe they were just too far along with production for this episode and they couldn't give this slot to a more meaningful story, but I still really wish they'd been able to, because while I didn't think this episode was terrible, it is a 22-minute time slot of this show that could have gone to something else. Not only that, but if we're talking about episodes that acknowledge Dipper's feelings for Wendy, it could have been more like the last episode that acknowledged Dipper's feelings for Wendy. Into the Bunker, which is one of the best episodes of the show. It had a great aesthetic, it had good plot development, and it was an overall fun episode with a really fun creature. I didn't think the spider person was a good monster at all. Like, I'm super arachnophobic, and this thing didn't even creep me out a little bit. She just came off as lame. From a viewer's point of view, like, in-universe, she's freaking terrifying, because I guess she lures people to Mystery Mountain and then eats them, later selling their desiccated corpses to the Mystery Mountain gift shop as mummy corpses. That is really terrifying in-universe. I'm actually kind of surprised they left her alive at the end, because, I mean, yeah, she's technically a person, she's a sentient thing, but I'm sorry, man-eating giant spider thing, even if it is a sentient man-eating spider thing, that's on my list of things that it's okay to kill off. Obviously, I have mixed feelings about this episode, but I do not in any way agree that it is the worst of the show. I think, for example, Love God is significantly worse than this episode. If this weren't so close to the end of the series, I'd probably think higher of it than I do. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of this episode if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.